Okay, so in this video clip, we continue to look at how to automate fairly standard type computations in accounting and in finance. And we're going to kick off here with starting very simply with time value estimations and then performing the estimation manually initially here in Python, and then automating as by creating a function, a dedicated function to run the estimation. So to derive a formula and then from the formula extrapolate that into a tool that can be automated and can be iterated. Okay, so just to motivate the discussion here, we start off with a fairly standard type of analysis that every student of accounting and finance would look at. And that's future value and present values. And we know that if we invest a sum of money today and earn interest cumulatively over a given period, that money builds up over that period. We could consider a situation, a very basic situation, where somebody invests $100 today, and at the end of 1 year, you earn 10%. And that the standard approach to estimating the return here, the future value, based on return of 10% for 1 year on $100 principal, is just to multiply by 1 plus the rate of interest times the original principal. And we get that figure, $110. So that's a fairly standard analysis, jumping from investing today 100, going 1 year out, how much money in our account at the end of 1 year. And in Excel and in Python, and here we're using Google Colab, that's relatively simple. We can investigate that. We can just manually put in our numbers. If for a moment we thought, look, it's 12%, then change the rate of interest to 12%. If it's 10, leave it at 10. So at the end of the year, we can see that it's $110. If we were concerned about the going out too many decimal places, we could round it to 2 decimal places and we get 110.0, right? So, okay, so what if then we make the analysis a little bit more sophisticated and we say, but we continue to invest that sum of money plus the interest earned in the first year for another year and earn an additional 10%. Well, we would extrapolate then from that it's 1 plus the rate of interest and times again 1 plus that rate of interest, and that would bring the sum of money in the account up to $121. We could summarize that to 100 by 1 plus the rate of interest to the power of the number of years that the funds have been invested for. So we get $100 by 1 plus the rate of interest to the power of the maturity. And the manual estimation here, relatively straightforward. We take our $100, we invest at 10%. So it's 1.1 multiplied by 1.1, and we get 121. And again, if we wanted to round to 2 decimal places, like all programming languages, all computations, a small artifact is sometimes introduced when same in Excel, a small artifact is introduced. So rounding it there simplifies that a little bit. So $121 at the end of 2 years. If we want to square, then same manual type estimations can be performed in Python. And you might note that the estimation to square is star and star again by here using 2. So we have to the power of 2, 100 multiplied by 1 plus the rate of interest, and then to the power of 2. And that gives us the same return as before. If I remove the rounding here, if we put in the rounding again, just so that we get it 2 decimal places. And don't worry about okay, so we'll just say round, and we get 121. And again, rounding to 2 decimal places, 121.0. Okay. If we're generalizing the formula, we could easily say the future value is equal to the present value by 1 plus the rate of interest times, or to the power of the maturity. And then if we're trying to understand, okay, what's the amount of money that accumulates in the third year of the investment if the rate of interest that's being earned is 10%, then we can go to the power of 3, and we get 133 to the power of 10. And again, we can sort of create, if you like, here, set up a formula in which to run the estimation. And we can say, look, the future value is equal to the present value by 1 plus the rate of interest divided by 100. So if we're saying R is 10%, if we divide by 100, that converts it to a decimal. So it's 1.1 to the power of 2. And if we say print out the present value, you can see we get $121. If we change that to 3 years, again, we're sort of automating the process here. But we can see as we increase the number of years, the amount of money that accumulates now goes up to 133. Possibly a better way and a more standard way to run the automation here is to create a user-defined function with def. And so we can define a formula or a function that takes these arguments, the present value, the rate of interest, and the maturity in terms of the number of years. And then we can identify, or we can introduce here the actual formula, so the present value by 1 plus the rate of interest to the power of n. And so if you like, if we run, now if I try to run future value here, it'll have no effect by introducing the terms 100, rate of interest 0.1, and then the number of years, let's say it's 2, should be 122. If I run that, that won't work because it's not a predefined function and I haven't brought in a library and so on. But if I create this user-defined function using def and say, by the way, this function def will use these arguments, and that's how we estimate the value in the account after a certain period of future value, if you like, in the using the arguments that we'll introduce. If we run this cell and then come back here and run the same cell, it should now estimate and perform that 121. And in fact, if we put in a future value FV and open brackets, because we've already set up in this cell here and executed this cell, the def function, this Python, this Jupyter notebook, which we have here in Colab, understands it's expecting 3 arguments here. It's expecting that we put in some value for the present value, that we put in some value for the rate of interest. Let's say it's 10%. I think the way we defined it was 10% because it's dividing by, actually no, it's 0.1. And then for 2 years, let's make it 3 years. And we're getting the 133 that we got before. Again, for 2 years, running that same estimation again, 121. For 3 years, 133. Now, we could also, if we weren't happy with maybe all these decimals, and we found this artifact here that's been introduced a bit disturbing, we can round to 3 decimal places by saying that the output that's been created comes in the form that we just want 3 decimal places. So we're defining the format for the output. So if we again run, if I run here this function, just take it the standard, we're getting that output. If I want to correct to the 3 decimal places, we load in this cell. So now FV is not just producing the computation, but it's also we're saying we want particular format and the output. And if I run that again, we'll go to the 3 decimal places. Okay, and likewise for the future value here, 100 rate of interest, 10% for 3-year term. What's the future value? Again, 133, and we've gone to 3 decimal places. Okay, so calculating the present value. So if we reverse the process here, do a little bit of reverse engineering, we could also automate fairly standard type estimations like determining the present value. Now, where does that become important? Perhaps in terms of investment decision making, or personal finance after or advising in your capacity as a finance practitioner, an accountant, or just in personal finance. Maybe you're advising and you want to determine. Suppose your 5-year-old daughter has just announced her desire to attend college. After some research, you determined that you need about $100,000 on her 18th birthday to pay for 4 years of college. If you earn 8% per annum on your investment, how much do you need to invest today to achieve your goal? So we want to know how much of a lump sum we need to invest today. So over a period of 13 years, that figure would accumulate to 100,000. So we want to set up a nest egg of 100,000 for 13 years. And we're trying to decipher how much money is required today that we need to invest so that it accumulates at the 8% rate over the 13-year term to $100,000. So we're reversing, if you like, the flow. And we can set up the manual estimation would look like this, but when we automate that estimation and set it up as a def user-defined function, we're saying we create this function PV. So to invoke this present value estimation, we say PV, how much money in the future? $100,000 at what rate? 8% for the 13-year term. So we're saying the future value, taking the generic formula and automating the process, the future value divided by 1 plus the rate of interest, 1 plus the rate of interest to the power of the number of years, if the interest is accumulating at an annual periodicity. So to run that estimation, we just invoke PV and we take our figure, and it's 8% over 13 years. Easily, we could do the same again. What if the rate? We could ask the what if question. What if it's, again, $100,000 and the rate of interest is not 8%, but 10. That means that we earn more interest per year. And again, it's for the 13-year period. How much money do I require today so that in 13 years' time, investing at 10% per year, we have $100,000 available at the end of that term? And that would be 28,966. Okay, annuities are also fairly significant in terms of, and very common in finance when we're looking at fairly standard type payments. So if we're looking at trying to, maybe in present value terms or in future value terms, determine the cumulative effect of making a uniform payment over a given period of time at a standardized periodicity. So again, if we think of mortgage payments, or if we think of car payments, or if we think of a pension income that might have to be supported by some lump sum, how much contributions should we make, or what's the payment in a mortgage, or even in a bond, fixed income type instrument, if we want to determine the present value of a stream of coupons, which are paid at regular intervals, a uniform amount for a given period of time for a rate of interest that was fixed. We could determine the present value using annuity structures, right? So for instance, an example here, what if we have a 5-year term, and for 5 years, we're going to receive $100, right, per period. And if we wanted to express that in terms of a present value, the standard accounting for this, or the standard present value type estimation we would perform is take each of those individual cash flows and discount at the rate of interest, the 10%, and then it's for the period of the 5 years. So that 100, when we convert in present value terms, is 90.91. And again, we do it iteratively, 82.64, and 100 received in year 3 when expressed in present value terms is 75.13. In year 4, as we apply the to the power of 4 as we discount that $100, you can see it's declining in value. And if we sum each of the 5 present values here, you can see the present value of the $100 received each period for the 5 years in present value terms at 10%. That's 379, right? So quite a discount over the headline figures here. Now, in terms of performing that estimation, if we were to do the manual estimation, whether in Excel or here in Python, if we were to take the $100, for instance, and apply the discount over a 2-year period at the 10%, that $100 that we observe here, you can see is equals to 82.64. The manual estimation, when performed here, we can observe is 82.64. So we can determine, yes, that the correct value is obtained. If we applied for, let's say, 3 years, the manual estimation, 75.13, 75.13. Okay, so we can see the manual estimation here. If we were to set that up and just write out each individual cash flow as we have here in the expression, the manual estimation running that discounting formula over the period for the 5 years, the value we obtain here is consistent with the value that we have here. Okay, of course, this is quite repetitive. So when we look at robotic process automation type decision making, and we're trying to, decide whether is it worth our while to automate this process, looks as if this is a fairly tedious type estimation. Likely that if we're to do this manual each time, it could create some error in the approach. It's always subject to human error. So a small, for instance, change here in the formula and we've messed up. Okay, so to nail down the process and to make sure that the process is estimated in a way that is correct, this type of estimation is ideal to set up as an automated process or as a user-defined function. Now, good for us, there is a formula that helps us here. There's a well-developed area of time value, annuity type estimation formula. And we could take the estimation, the manual estimation here, and piggyback on a formula that is quite common in present value annuity type estimation. So we could take the periodic payment, that's the $100, and we could say by applying this present value annuity factor in the square brackets here, it would be 1 minus 1 plus r to the power of negative term, which is 5 years, divided by the rate of interest. And so if we were to populate each of the variables here by the 10% for the interest rate, the periodic payment 100, and the interest rate of 10%, and the term being 5 years, we would get the same estimation. And we could verify that here. Again, we could set out, deploy the formula as given here, and then introduce in our arguments, and then apply the formula, and then say, okay, print out this present value annuity. And we get the 379, which corresponds with the 37908 here. Okay, again, if there was a higher frequency, so sometimes, especially in the area of mortgage financing, the frequency or the periodicity of the payment is 12 times a year, not once a year. Could be 12 times a year, but we might have the interest rate expressed as an annual rate. And normally how we adjust for that is to bring in, so take the same formula that we have here, but just adopt by the frequency of the compounding term, so which we'll refer to as M. Now, if we say here that M is 1, we revert back to the same type of estimation. But we could generalize what we have here by bringing in M if the frequency of the compounding is more than once a year. So for instance, if it was 12, we could write 12 here, and we get a slightly different result. But it's useful just to set it up, because when we go on to mortgage type repayment estimations, being able to extrapolate across wider periodicities is very, very useful. And again, what we're trying to do here is take some fairly standard type estimation and put it into a formula, and then define that formula so that it's very, we can deploy it in any type of situation. Okay, so we'll just run this formula again, just to verify, if you like, what we're doing here is testing that our formula works, that if we introduce M, it doesn't disturb anything. And we can see that the result we have obtained is consistent with what we know to be true here, right? That if we take the present value of $100 paid out over a 5-year period at a frequency of once a year for the 5 years, and discount at 10% per year, that expressed in present values is 379, and we're getting the same here. And if we generalize for higher frequency, allowing for where the payment could be more than once a year, again, we're getting 379. Okay, now knowing that this formula works, testing it and verifying that it works, we could then set it up as a user-defined function. Okay, so here, for instance, we set out our cell. So just to note, because I haven't executed this cell, if I try to run this cell here, it won't work, because we haven't run or executed the user-defined function. So once we execute the function, then this MPVA is our user-defined function, and it says, look, if the periodicity is once a year, and it's for 5 years, and we're discounting at 10%, and we're receiving $100 for the 5 years, each year for the 5 years, then the present value of that would be 379. And we could make one little change there just to do a little test. MPVA, open brackets, and it should be prompting me. Okay, so let's put a capital here just to be consistent. MPVA. Okay, and then we'll put in, we'll say, okay, it's for 1 year. comma, it's once a year. And then it's prompting me, okay, how many years? It's 5 years. And then what's the rate of interest? I'm going to say it's 10% as before. And then instead of using 100, I'm just going to jump to 1000. And you can see we're getting a value of 379078. So we just have moved the decimal one place to the right. So just a little test to see, are we on track here? Is our model working? But if we're confident that this formula works and we have tested that already and verified against the manual estimation, then in terms of automating the process here, we're taking the manual estimation, which is quite tedious to set up, very likely to result in human error if it's repeated over and over again. Much better to automate the process, check that the formula that we're introducing works, and then set it up as a user-defined function in Python using this def command here. Also worth noting, if you don't tabulate, it doesn't like that. You need to move across, and then it will accept the function. So a small error sometimes that arises is that you don't indent. You need the indentation. If we set up the user-defined function like this, doesn't work in Python. So we need to indent using the tab button, and then it works. Okay. Okay, so what about a future value of an annuity? So just to go back then to try and visualize a little bit what that looks like. Now, for most people, this is not terribly new, but it's a type of example that a lot of accountants, finance practitioners would be familiar with, that if we were investing $100 per year for a 5-year period, and we're looking at how much money has accumulated in the account at the end of the 5 years, we would use a future value annuity. Now, the manual estimation would look like that. If we were to set that up as a manual estimation and run it, you can see everything is fine. It works well, 610. So we're verifying the result that we obtained here. So no obvious issues around that. But it's quite likely when we perform this type of estimation, or if we were running this type of estimation and we're in the office or we're around colleagues, small errors result just because of lack of attention to small detail, or you're done it for the 15th time or the 20th time, and errors can result. So to avoid errors, automating the process and setting it up as an automated function makes a lot of sense. So how do we deploy that here? Well, we would first of all get a formula maybe that assists in the process. So we have a future value annuity function, right? And so we're basically setting up the future value annuity as if we invest $100 for 5 years at 10%. So 5 years at 10%, at the end of that period, we would have $610.51. Consistent with what we have here with the manual estimation. Okay, so we can define. Now, again, if I run this function, it doesn't exist. It's not a preloaded. It's not, we didn't pull it in from our libraries, doesn't exist in the NumPy library. So if I run that without defining the function, we're going to get nothing back. So if I wanted to automate this process here, right, I generalize the formula. I say, okay, 1 plus the rate of interest to the power of n minus 1 over 10%. And then we have to put into the model here the periodic payment multiplied by what's in the square brackets, the future value annuity factor. Okay, so let's run that. So if we run this function, we create the user-defined function, and it's available in this notebook, not available anywhere else, just in this Jupyter notebook and Google Colab. And if I run the numbers here, I'm getting 610.51, which is consistent with what we have here and in the manual estimation. Okay. Again, if we wanted to take on board here that the frequency of the money being put into the account was higher than once a year, what if it was 12 times a year? You had a monthly saving plan. Just a small adjustment here. To do that, we would put in M. That doesn't work, so we need to define the function, but we would include an M here. So it's just a small adjustment with M, and then try that again. And we're getting 610.51. Okay, so let's take a look here. We'll run with this example. A young lady is saving for the deposit on the apartment. She lodges 300 euros into an account at the end of each month. The account pays a monthly interest rate of 0.5%. How much has she got in the account after 3 years? So she's going to put in each month $300. Now, the interest rate here is not given as an annual amount. It's actually the monthly amount. So we can work with that. And the way we will perform the estimation using the annuity factor here is we're going to say, okay, $300 per month by 1 plus the rate of interest. So we put in 0.0, not 5, but 0.005. That's 0.5% to the power of 36, because there's 36 months in 3 years, minus 1 over the rate of interest. And if we were to put that amount of money in, earn 0.5% per month, that figure would accumulate to 11,883 cents. Okay, so we can set up our function here, but we're going to say M is 1. Now, we could adjust the interest rate and change 1, but in fact, the way we're going to run it here is going to be consistent with the text. So we'll assume here that the rate of interest is 0.5% a month, 36 months, paid once a month, and it's 300 per month. And we can verify the result we have obtained here is consistent. So now the automated estimation is consistent with the manual estimation. And what if we change the figures? I did some of these figures before in Excel. We increase the rate of interest to 7.7% per month. Over 36 months, that's 12,234. What if we go back to the 0.5%, but for 50 months, putting in 300 per month over that term of 50 months, that goes up to 16,993 euros. And if it's 36 months at the 0.8% per month, then the figure is 12,458. Let's just verify those figures. Okay, it's the same as here. 16,993, same as here. And 12,458, same as here. Okay, calculate the necessary annuity payment required to yield a future value of 10,000 after 36 months, 0.5% per month. So in this instance, we're looking at the problem in a slightly different way. We're actually trying to figure out how much do I need to contribute per month. So at the end of 36 months, I have a straight 10,000 euros. Now the interest rate is given as 5%, but I'm trying to figure out how much monthly payment do I need to contribute so that we end up with 10,000 in my account at the end of the 36 months. Okay, so we can kind of see, we can infer here that if we follow the logic, we could create a function that estimates the, if you like, the future value annuity payment, right? So how much money do we have to contribute each month? So we look at the problem and generalize it to a formula, and then we take the square, the future value. The future value is how much money should be in the account at the end, or the target figure in the account at the end of the term, the 36 months, and we divide it by what's in the square brackets, where I've defined the square brackets as being what's here. Now, if I run the function here again, without having run this one first, I get back, yeah, I'm not going to get the right answer, right? Because it doesn't know, I haven't trained the Python notebook here to do its job. But here, once I've executed this cell, the PV APT is now something that the Jupyter notebook understands and can process that estimation. So we need to put in $254, 22, 21, 22 per month in order to have $10,000 at the end of the 5 years. Now, for car finance, for mortgages, for pension contributions, building up a nest egg, these type of annuity estimations are very significant. They drive a lot of our fairly practical aspects of what we do in terms of understanding and advising people what type of money they need to set aside in order to have a nest egg. And there's different ways of obviously motivating the question here. So for instance, in this next question, we're looking at how long, right? The unknown here is going to be, okay, if we put in $300 per month and the interest rate is 5%, 0.5% a month, how many months will it take before we have in full accumulated 10,000 euros or $10,000? So how long would it take to reach a target of 10,000 euros with payments of 300 euros per month with the monthly interest rate of 0.5%? Okay, so that type of estimation. Now, how do I derive the formula? There's a little bit of manipulation here. I won't go too deep into this, but it's all fairly standard algebraic manipulation. But we can express the number of years, or the number of periods required, number of months in this instance, the number of months required in order to hit a particular target of, in our case, that 10,000. So I can take the formula that I have here, and I can perform the estimation I did in Excel. And for the specific numbers that we have here, utilizing the numbers that we have, making use of natural logarithms, so on, we can see it takes 31. We would need at least 31 months before we reach the 10,000 mark. It's saying 3091, so we wouldn't quite have hit 10,000 at month 30. So we have to go to the following month, and we would have 10,000 and probably a bit more available in the account. Okay, so let's see if this is the formula then that we're happy with. If we've decided that this is the formula that we've tested and we're quite happy that it actually will run or can be deployed to make this estimation, let's see how we would set that up. Now it's a little bit more involved because now we have log, we have square root, we have we might have pi, well, we don't have pi just yet, and we may have to use an exponential term when if we're considering continuous rates of interest. But just for the moment, really, it's log that we have to bring into our using from the math library. We're going to make reference to log, and I want to define the future value annuity. So N here is denoting the number of payments required in order that the standard uniform amount of money accumulates to the target value, which is the future value. So for instance, if I don't execute this cell and just proceed to, okay, it's 0.5% a month, target value or future value is 10,000, and I'm going to contribute the monthly payment of $300. How many months does it take to reach 10,000? That won't work. We need to break it down. We need to create the use define function first, then apply the automation. So in terms of a robotic process automation, we've considered, look, this process is worth automating because just too many issues arise if you have to create a function like that and perform that manual estimation. Nobody wants to do that. Let's just go set up a formula, test it to see, verify that it works, and then implement, test, and see, are we getting a result that's consistent with the Excel results that I had obtained here. Right. And if, I want to do a little bit further testing, what if we wanted to accumulate 20,000 euros over the period? Now, given the power of compounding interest, it wouldn't take we wouldn't double. It wouldn't be straightforward as that. It would actually take 57. We would need 58 months before we would have cut past that 20,000 target. So it would be 57.68 months, but we'd have to go to the 58 month before that amount of money would be available in our account. Okay, so let's just verify we get 57.68 months for our result here. Running the estimation again. So we're saying 0.5%, 20,000 is the target future value, making a contribution of 300. How many months? 57 months, same as we have here. What if the interest rate was 1% per month? And we want to perform the same estimation. Here in Excel, we worked that out to be 28. Let's just verify. And it's also, we've established consistent here with the 28, right? So any figure you put in here, we can obviously invoke, once we have set up the user define function, then we can invoke the formula. We can invoke here the user define function and say, look, the rate of interest is 1% per month. I need 100,000 euros, let's say. And the amount of money I'm putting in is 1,000 euros per month. How many months does it take to build up 100,000 euros? It takes 69 months, right? And, in terms of years, if I took that 69, 66, and divided by 12, we could convert the months to years. It would take 5 years, almost 6 years, to build up that 100,000 if the rate of interest was 1% a month. Okay. Now, present value annuity factor. So we've been looking at future value annuities. I'm going to now look at present value annuities, and I'm going to set it up as both for a bond type pricing, bond valuations, and for mortgages. So, but a standard present value annuity factor, right, is if we have a periodic payment and we're earning an interest rate that we know for a given term, how much is that worth in present value? So these future payments, when converted to present value, where the periodic payment is uniform, occurring at regular intervals, and the rate of interest is fixed. Okay, and if we adjust the formula here to take into account higher periodicity, so we know some repayment schedules are not annual. For instance, if it's mortgages, it's monthly. If it was car repayments, it's monthly, and you're setting it up as an annuity type estimations, a fixed regular payment that's occurring, and you want to utilize that. Now, we'll take the example, given a young man wishing to buy a new car, reckons that he can repay $350 per month from a loan. The bank charges an interest rate of 0.7%. So this is not an annual rate of interest, it's a monthly rate of interest. He wishes to pay off the loan over a period of 3 years. How much can he afford? So this is a situation where somebody wanting to buy a car, they know they have $350 that they can budget for, and they are willing to go for the 3-year period to pay off the car. What does that translate to in terms of actually in the present value terms? Can they derive from that $350 payment in the future? So if you know you can pay $350 per month for a term of 3 years, so 36 months, and the rate of interest currently in vogue is 7.7% per month, not year, 0.7% per month. How much can you afford to borrow today with that $350 availability in your budget? Okay, if we perform the estimation and we use this formula, present value annuity, the present value of the annuity is 11,103. So we would advise in this instance, if you were a car sales or you're negotiating the finance terms behind the purchase of a car, and somebody is indicating that we have $350 a month available. Okay, so the 350 by 1 minus 1 plus the rate of interest for the 36 months over 0.007 accumulate in present value terms is 11,103. So we can see that in terms of making with an availability of 350 per month in a budget, that translates to 11,000 in terms of the price point or the affordability threshold for the individual acquiring the car. Now we can implement that in Python. It's sort of a manual estimation that we set up here, and we can automate. Again, another example, calculate the present value of an annuity that pays $5,000 at the end of each quarter, every 3 months for the next 10 years, where the discount rate is 8%. So slightly different type of situation where it's a quarterly payment, so 4 times a year. And in this instance, then we introduce M like before. And so we're looking at $5,000 at the end of each quarter for the next 10 years. In present value terms, that's equal to $136,777 dollars. And to run the estimation again, we can set up and verify the result obtained here. So once we've done that, we can check back to see are our results consistent with what we have here. We could make some adjustments. So for instance, if we wanted to change the payment to being monthly, just change this to 12, still 10, 8%, and the periodic payment, but now per month is 5,000. That should equate to, in present value terms, 412,000. Let's just verify. And we're getting the same result here. We can change it to twice a year, 2, and we still have for a 10-year term at the 8%, should be $67,000. Okay, so once we have the formula set up and tested, we can then move on to automation. Okay, so in the next video, I'm going to take a look at how we apply this to bond pricing.